Welcome back to NYSE TV Live, everyone. I'm Kristen Scholler here in studio above the trading floor. We are off to the races with stock trading now underway. And joining me now is Dan Ives, Managing Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. Dan, it's great to have you on the show, especially today, because earlier we saw the European Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, ring the opening bell. What does her role mean for companies based here in the U.S. that do business abroad in Europe?
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting time because with the AI revolution and everything we're seeing with big tech getting stronger, clearly, her and as well as the EU is taking a more aggressive stance toward AI and big tech. And I think how this all plays out is going to be very important, especially for tech companies. Europe is a significant piece. So that's going to be a big narrative as we go into 2025.
I would be curious to know, too, Dan, in terms of her focus when it comes to regulating these large U.S. tech companies, how it might differ. Can you explain that to our viewers between the regulation that they see here in America?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been much more hawkish or stricter than we've seen in the U.S. Now, look, clearly, big tech has a bullseye on its back in the Beltway as well, right? From an antitrust, we've seen some of the DOJ issues. But I think Europe a lot more restrictive. And that's a double-edged sword because even though there's been fines and others, big tech companies, are really starting to maybe, move away from some of the innovation in Europe. And that is going to be the balancing act for the EU going forward, especially when it comes to this AI revolution, which is, moving full steam ahead.
I would be interested to know if we're seeing U.S. regulators really take the lead from the European Commissioner in terms of the actions that she is looking out for companies and notably here consumers.
Yeah, look, I think the bigger issue is that the strong have gotten stronger. And we see that, right? And I think regulatory continues to be well behind the actual technology. And I think it's a concern for US regulators. And we see that from antitrust, the stuff with FTC and Con, as well as DOJ. And this story is not going away. I mean, actually, it's going to become more and more front and center, just given what we see with Mag 7 technology. You look at things like OpenAI, and I think those are going to be the issues that not just in the EU, but here in the US that we navigate, just
Yeah.
given there's a fourth industrial revolution playing out.
Well, we know that data is so important, and especially protecting consumer data. We've seen a lot of that come out of the European Commission in terms of some of these actions on large technology companies. Dan, as it relates to artificial intelligence, integrity is also a factor in addition to data. But lay out the case here for the layperson, the viewer who's watching, who's wondering perhaps, how am I protected by the European Commission if I am using some of these platforms abroad in Europe?
Yeah, and that's why anyone that goes to Europe, I mean, with GDPR, I mean, you spend 5 minutes checking boxes to get onto a website, right? So that is something that a lot more restrictions from a data privacy perspective. You think about like Google and you look at Meta and any other platform in terms of advertising dollars. Apple, much different, right? Because that's privacy is part of it. They're not selling that data. But look, that's something that European regulators have focused on, but European consumers have to navigate as well because when you look where everything's going, GDPR has been laid out, but the reality is it hasn't really changed the habits of European consumers. That's, I think, right now that conundrum or quagmire that the EU is dealing with.
Interesting. So let's talk about the technology space. I know you follow these stocks very closely as an equity analyst. Dan, are you seeing emerging trends here that are setting up to be winning trends heading into the fall and, of course, year end?
Yeah, I think, look, the AI revolution, we've talked about it's a 1995, almost 1996 moment, not a 1999 dot-com bubble moment. And I think even though this is led by Godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA, as well as Microsoft and others, now it's about the second, third, fourth derivatives playing out. Look at names like Palantir and others. I think that's just a taste of what we're going to see in 2025, where we believe this tech bull market rages on, especially with the Fed a soft landing and cuts, by 100, 125 bips of cuts on the horizon.
I would be interested to add on that, Dan. We were talking about the markets, of course, after the equity markets opened when we saw Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commissioner, on the opening bell platform here at the stock exchange. But large mega cap technology names really have led the market this summer. Finally, in July, we did start to see a broadening out. Some of these smaller cap names were able to get a bid. I'm curious here how you expect some of these large technology names to perform from a stock perspective now that rates are coming down.
Yeah, I think Mag 7 are up another 15 to 20% over the next 3 to 6 months. I mean, this is just the start of monetization. And despite some of the headwinds that we've seen, I actually think we're on just the next phase of monetization for big cap tech. They continue to lead us higher in that left lane, going 90 miles an hour. Some other sectors, right lane, going 45 miles an hour, might have the value. The growth is in big tech.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, we've seen some of that growth. Dan, in terms of what else is on your radar on the global scale, what can you tell us amid the UN General Assembly this week here in Manhattan?
Look, I think right now and even a number of people from different countries I met with the last day or two, because they're trying to figure out how did they get a piece of the AI revolution? How did they have innovation come to their country? What does it mean for consumers in their countries, whether it's Europe, Asia, Africa? That I think is the big focus. You could talk about geopolitical and conflicts and obviously ESG, but I think right now a big focus is how, from an AI revolution, do these companies ultimately start to build out in some of these countries in terms of innovation labs and others to make sure that they're also part of this AI party.
Mm-hmm. The AI party is very real. We've seen it in terms of interest and topics around artificial intelligence as just a baseline gauge. Dan Ives, we appreciate you joining, of course, from Wedbush
Thank you.
Securities. Thank you.